Chapter 426, Mural. Around 15 minutes later, the door of the three-floor pavilion abruptly sprang open, and Han Li emerged from inside with an elated expression. He then turned around and made a hand seal, and a vast expanse of golden light suddenly emerged over the entire pavilion. There were countless runes flashing within the golden light, and all of a sudden, the pavilion shrank down to only the size of a lantern before being stowed away into Han Li's storage bracelet. This treasure is more than powerful enough to trap a mid-true immortal cultivator, and it can maybe even trap a late true immortal cultivator who hasn't cultivated any spiritual enhancement secret techniques, but it won't work on anyone beyond that. Having said that, I can use it in conjunction with other treasures, so it can still be quite useful. Right as these thoughts were running through his mind, bursts of rumbling suddenly began to ring out in the distance, and he hurriedly turned to discover that the sound was coming from the three palaces. Clearly, Shui Han and the others had begun invading the palaces. Right at this moment, Taoist Shei's voice suddenly rang out in his mind. "Fellow Taoist Han, come here right now." He immediately responded to the call, springing up into the air, and before long, he had landed in a weed-infested courtyard. Several Tao warriors were in the process of searching for treasures in the side room of the residence, but the doors of the main room were wide open, and Taoist Shi could be seen inside. Han Li made his way into the room to find that Taoist Shai was staring at a wall in the room. "I didn't find any noteworthy treasures in here, but this mural is quite interesting," Taoist Shai said without even turning around. Han Li immediately cast his gaze toward the surrounding walls upon hearing this, and he discovered that they were covered in vibrant and colorful murals. The things drawn in the mural varied drastically, and the scenes depicted were also extremely chaotic, with severely ravaged landscapes that were overrun with lava, ferocious storms of lightning and fire, and it truly painted a doomsday-like scene. As Han Li continued to observe the mural, he felt as if the depicted scenes were beginning to move. The lava on the ground was flowing, the fireballs in the sky were beginning to descend, and lightning was flashing in the dark clouds up above. Many figures dressed in all types of attire were also flying through the air, performing all types of different actions, such as making hand seals, raising weapons, swinging fists. Aside from the battling cultivators, there were also many mountainous beasts depicted on the mural, all of which were extremely fearsome in appearance and possessed various different formidable abilities. Having dabbled in the 12 awakening transformations, Han Li knew many species of powerful ancient beasts, but he wasn't able to identify even a single one of the beasts depicted in the mural. The mural depicted an immortal battle of an enormous scale, and even though Han Li was only witnessing the battle through the mural, he felt as if he were situated directly in the battle, and a chill instantly ran down his spine. However, at the same time, he couldn't help but feel a little perplexed. All of the figures on the mural with clearly visible features seemed to belong to the same camp, yet all of their enemies had blurry facial features, as if they were enshrouded in layers of gray mist. They appeared to be cultivators, but also somehow different. "Do you know when the battle depicted on this mural took place, fellow Taoist Han?" Taoist Shei suddenly asked. Han Li shook his head in response. "I don't. Do you, Brother Shei?" He was thinking back to all of the historical records he had seen in the northern glacial Immortal region, but he couldn't think of any battle that corresponded with this one. "I don't know either. I just thought these murals were very strange, so I wanted you to come and take a look," Taoist Shei replied with a shake of his head. Han Li had thought that he would be able to get some answers from Taoist Shei, so he was rather disappointed to hear this response. But this wasn't an important matter anyway. After that, he searched through some more buildings with Taoist Shei and gathered quite a few treasures of different calibers. There weren't many that he could use, but he could certainly sell them for a lot of immortal origin stones once he left the Immortal Manor. Once the hour was up, Han Li stowed Taoist Shei and his Tao warriors away, then returned to the same place as before. Lu Yuqing and Patriarch Coldflame were already waiting there, and the former's eyes were sparkling with excitement, while the latter wore a neutral expression, making it impossible to tell what he was thinking. After reuniting, the three of them made their way toward the spirit medicine garden on the rear mountain. Before long, the three of them descended onto a plot of land right in front of a square garden that was over 10 acres in area. The garden was surrounded by walls that were roughly 40 to 50 feet tall, constructed from some type of blue crystalline material. The material was giving off a layer of watery blue light interspersed with specks of starry light that presented a very pleasant sight to behold. Han Li swept his gaze over the walls, and a hint of surprise immediately appeared on his face. He had identified this blue crystal to be an extremely rare type of material called the heavenly crystal rock, and it could be used to refine spirit treasures. It wasn't particularly difficult to find in the outside world, but such an enormous quantity of it in one place was still a very rare sight, and using it as bricks to construct walls for a garden was a display of extreme opulence. At each corner of the walls stood a thick stone pillar that was riddled with complex array patterns, and dazzling starlight was radiating from the pillar, forming a thick starry light barrier in the air that encompassed the entire garden. Countless star designs were flashing over the light barrier as if they were playing out the movements of the celestial bodies in the sky, presenting a profound sight to behold. From the outside, Han Li could see that there were all types of spirit plants in the garden, and there was a faint, pleasant fragrance coming out of the garden that even the starry light barrier wasn't able to contain. An elated look appeared in Han Li's eyes, but as he took a closer look at the starry light barrier, his brows furrowed slightly in dismay. This light barrier appeared rather similar to the starry light barrier that had to be bypassed in order to enter the Light Frost Palace, but this one appeared even more profound, so it was most likely going to be even more difficult to break. This restriction is most likely going to be very difficult to break through conventional means. Having said that, the great 5 elemental true light that you and fellow Taoist Xiang unleashed earlier should be perfect for breaking this restriction, Han Li said as he turned to Patriarch Coldflame. A slightly awkward look appeared on Patriarch Coldflame's face upon hearing this, and he said, "While I do know the mantra for the great 5 elemental true light, 5 extremely pure 5 elemental spirit treasures are required to unleash it, and I only have spirit treasures of the fire and earth attributes. So, that's not a problem. I just so happen to have a spirit treasure of each of the remaining 3 elements, and they should be at a sufficient level of purity for the task." Han Li replied as he swept a sleeve through the air, releasing a trio of treasures, namely a golden ring, a green wooden sword, and a blue badge. All 3 spirit treasures were emanating astonishingly bright spiritual light, and they weren't inferior in the slightest compared with the 5 spirit treasures that were previously used. Han Li had slain countless cultivators in the immortal realm, most of whom were true immortals, so he naturally had a large collection of high-caliber spirit treasures. "You are truly a wealthy man, fellow Taoist Han. In that case, there won't be any further issues. It's just that the mantra for the great 5 elemental true light is a little difficult to grasp, but I'm sure it won't be a problem for someone of your wisdom," Patriarch Coldflame said. He flipped a hand over to produce a jade slip as he spoke, then handed it to Han Li, who accepted the jade slip before injecting his spiritual sense into it. The mantra in the jade slip wasn't very long, but just as Patriarch Coldflame described, it was quite difficult to comprehend. Han Li quickly memorized the entire thing, then sat down on the spot and closed his eyes to mull over what he had seen. "Let's keep a lookout for Brother Han, Senior Coldflame," Lu Yuqing suggested to Patriarch Coldflame, to which the latter nodded in response. Both of them then backed away to give Han Li some space while scouring their surroundings for any potential hazards. Close to 2 hours passed by before Han Li abruptly opened his eyes, then rose to his feet. Both Lu Yuqing and Patriarch Coldflame immediately turned to him upon sensing this, while Han Li began to chant an incantation while pointing a finger at the 3 spirit treasures in front of him. The 3 treasures instantly rose up into the sky, with each of them releasing a ball of dazzling light. And as Han Li made a hand seal, the 3 balls of light began to come together. Patriarch Coldflame was astonished to see this. Have you already mastered the mantra, fellow Taoist Han? I once cultivated a 5 elemental ability in the past, so I was able to grasp this one a little faster than expected. Han Li explained. He was naturally referring to the divine essence fused light. 5 elemental secret techniques were notoriously profound and difficult to master due to having to incorporate and balance 5 elements at once. But the mantra for the divine essence fused light was rather similar to this one, and that was why it hadn't been all that difficult for him to master this mantra. You really are full of surprises, fellow Taoist Han, Patriarch Cold Flame chuckled, seemingly already accustomed to expecting the unexpected when it came to Han Li. He didn't waste any more time with words as he flipped a hand over to produce the crimson bowl and the yellow seal before also chanting an incantation, and the pair of spirit treasures instantly flew up into the sky while radiating dazzling spiritual light that fused with the spiritual light emanating from Han Li's trio of spirit treasures.